Welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or via Zoom virtually. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is time for that member to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. If you require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I am also pleased to advise that we will be broadcasting live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note that the Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded version of the meeting. Public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and/or consent. The purpose of the public meetings are to inform and provide the public with the opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to the applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will explain the purpose of the application and report all correspondence received. Next, the applicant will present any further relevant information. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And next, members of the committee will be given an opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentation and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things: approve the application, deny the application, or defer the application pending receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have provided oral submissions or written objections but disagree with the committee's decision on the application may appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for an appeal of consent applications is 20 days within the giving of the notice, and for minor variances within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please first give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that names and addresses of those individuals who speak at the meeting will appear within the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of the decision, please leave your name with and address with the township staff. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Adoption of the meeting minutes. We can get that. So we have motion COA 2024-019, moved by member Hiles, seconded by member Vandergeest, that the minutes of the March 19th, 2024 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted as printed and distributed. We are carried. So there are no adjourned applications, so we will move on to new applications. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for application E1, applications for consent B09-23 and B-10-23.
Thank you, Chair. So the first two consent applications this evening, B09-23 and B10-23 Wallace, for lands located at 68 Coldwater Road. The subject lands are located within the settlement area of Coldwater, as shown here, outlined in red. For those familiar, the food land property is located just here, with the more traditional downtown area and the arena located here, just for context. This is the 2023 aerial imagery of the subject properties. So the subject lands are fully outlined in red here. There is currently a dwelling, recently constructed single detached dwelling on the subject property, located to the north end. What this application proposes is the creation of two vacant commercial lots, as shown here in in yellow, lot A and B. So as mentioned, this application does seek to facilitate the creation of two commercial lots within the settlement area of Coldwater, an area where both growth and development are directed to occur. The severed lands would be required to obtain additional Planning Act approvals, being a zoning bylaw amendment application to conform to the township's official plan, should the committee choose to grant the provisional approval this evening. That is a recommendation of staff. The lands are actually designated settlement employment in the township's official plan. So despite the current zoning of R1, which is applied to the lands, the township's official plan envisions these being used for settlement employment and providing employment opportunities to the community. So that's where that rezoning would come in to ensure that those lands are rezoned to establish a settlement employment use on the property. An environmental impact study was submitted as part of the complete application, and that was peer reviewed by the township's consulting ecologist, which did demonstrate that no negative impacts are anticipated from this application. This is the severance sketch, which was provided by the applicant's planner as part of the application. The lands here, the white lands are the retained lands. And then the two yellow pieces of land here are the two severed Lot A and Lot B, both with approximately 22 meters of frontage. And about half an acre in size each. This is just a site visit photo from when staff are on site posting the notice. There's really not a lot to see on the property right now. The lands which are proposed to be severed are vacant. I would just point out to the committee that during staff's site inspection, we did notice that there is a shipping container currently on the property, as well as an existing accessory structure located here just to the left or the south side of that existing dwelling. Township staff have recommended a condition to the committee to ensure that the lands are brought into compliance and be demonstrated to comply with the township zoning bylaw. We just don't want to create a situation where the new lot line for the proposed lots would result in a deficient setback for this shed. And additionally, the township zoning bylaw does not permit a shipping container in a residential zone. So just ensuring that those lands comply with the requirements of the bylaw before the consent certificate would be issued. So as discussed within the staff report, the PPS, the growth plan, the official plan, and the zoning bylaw was evaluated by the applicant's consulting planner as part of their planning justification report. Township staff have no objections and generally concur with the professional opinion of Ms. Lemieux as expressed throughout that PJR. As we talked about earlier, the lands are within a settlement area. They're to be the focus of growth and development within the township. A zoning bylaw amendment is recommended as a condition to ensure conformity with the township's official plan. And then just that additional condition that staff are recommending that does vary a little bit from the staff report. I will bring that to the committee's attention. So we do have a slightly amended set of conditions, as well as a slightly amended motion from what was included as part of the agenda. There were no comments or objections received from the Fire and Emergency Services Department or the clerk's office. Public Works has no objection to the proposed severed lots being connected to the municipal water and sewer system. However, Public Works does caution the applicant that there is limited capacity in the sewer system in Coldwater. However, I would just like to let the committee know that allocation would not be guaranteed for these two lots until a site plan agreement was executed, which would be a requirement for development of commercial lands. The building department also has no objection to the consent application. They did just raise a bit of a point with respect to lot grading. So they just want to ensure that the development of the retained residential lands, the grading of that is completed prior to the severance of these two lots, just to ensure that the severed lands are not required to effectively manage stormwater on the retained lands. There was also some comments from the building division here with respect to limiting distances within the OBC, just given the limited lot width of the two properties. The Severn Sound Environmental Association has also reviewed the application because it is located within a wellhead protection area. which is a protected area under the South Georgian Bay Lake Simcoe Source Water Protection Plan for municipal drinking water. The lands are captured within that area. So Severn Sound, who acts as the township's risk management official, did undertake a review of this. Some additional information is requested with respect to the proposed uses of the commercial lands. However, that can be dealt with through the zoning bylaw amendment process because that's where it would be most appropriate to scope the uses if necessary. And finally, Enbridge also provided a comment just stating no objections to the application, but they do reserve the right to amend or remove development conditions. So finally, based off of all of that information, planning and development staff have no objections to the provisional approval of the applications, subject to the amended recommended conditions. The conditions are pretty standard for this type of development, being that the severed lands be rezoned to an appropriate zone for the settlement employment designation at the owner's expense. They shall make the application and pay the applicable fees and deposit as required. A reference plan be prepared to legally describe the severed lands. A copy of the in preparation draft deed be provided to the Secretary Treasurer for review. Together with a signed acknowledgement and direction, a payment of 5% cash in lieu of parkland, which would go to the municipality. The applicant shall provide confirmation from the designing engineer of the lot grading plan associated with the construction of the dwelling on the retained lands to confirm that it has been completed in accordance with the approved plan and is contained entirely on the retained lands. Staff are also recommending that the property owners enter into a consent agreement with the municipality to ensure that that site plan agreement is completed prior to any development of the property, to ensure that those recommendations and mitigation measures from the environmental impact study are incorporated, as well as any recommendations from the associated peer review, and also to satisfy the requirements for development within a flood proofing area. Those flood proofing measures are most suited to being dealt with at the time of site plan because it would really depend on the development proposal, what sort of measures are necessary. So that's why it's being deferred to that stage. Taxes be paid in full. Any fees disbursements would be the responsibility of the property owner. The amended condition is noted in red, just that the applicant shall demonstrate to the township that the subject lands are in compliance with the township zoning bylaw. And finally, that the conditions be completed within 2 years of the decision. So that concludes my presentation. If the committee has any questions, happy to answer. Thank you. Oh, and I will also just add that Ms. Lemieux is in attendance this evening and may wish to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? Please unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you'd like. If you have a presentation, you may share your screen.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee. Nice to see everyone virtually. Again, for members of the public who may be watching, my name is Victoria Lemieux, Senior Planner with Morgan Planning and Development. Our address for the minutes is 98 Cumseth Street, Orillia, Ontario, L3V6K8. I just wanted to make a comment, Chair, that obviously we really appreciate staff's work on this file. We've been working closely together on this one for quite a while. So we're excited that this is finally at the point where we're in front of committee this evening. We have reviewed the conditions and the amended condition, and we have no concerns with that. And I'm just really here for any questions that committee members may have. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any persons participating virtually by Zoom who have either questions or who wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application? Please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Are there any persons in attendance in person who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or opposition to the application? Please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. If there are no further comments or questions, I declare that the public portion of the application is closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on the application?
Just a question through the chair to the township. So if we move forward today with the severing of the 3 separate parcels, and then they're going to rezoning, correct? If that doesn't go through, or there's any issue, would it remain as 3 residential lots, or would it stay as 1? If there's any concerns there.
So through the chair, because it would be, the rezoning would be a recommended condition. If the committee approved it, then it would be a condition. And should the applicant not be able to satisfy all of the conditions, for example, the rezoning, then the consent would essentially lapse and it would just remain as 1 property.
If we can get a motion. So motion COA 2024-020, moved by member Bossy, seconded by member Vandergeest, that staff report D24-013 be received, and that the matter of consent applications B0923 and B10-23, the applications be provisionally approved subject to the amended. Okay. Recommended conditions included as attachment 5 to the staff report D24-13 as amended. And we are carried. The hearing for this application is now closed. You're more than welcome to feel free to stay and remain for the meeting or leave as the committee moves on to the next application. So we will now move on to application E2, application for consent B-02-03-24, and application for minor variance A-07-24. Would township staff please briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notification circulated?
Thank you, Chair. So the next applications on our agenda are concurrent applications for consent and minor variance for the lands recognized as 3446 Bayou Road. No additional correspondence has been received since the publishing of the agenda, and I will go over comments received at the end of the presentation. As shown on screen, the subject property is located at the corner of Grand Tamarack Crescent and Bayou Road in the West Shore Settlement area. The property is nearest to the west side here to Provincial Highway 11, and to the east is Lake Couchiching. Again, it is within the fully serviced settlement area with all surrounding uses being single detached residential, with some townhomes developed on the sort of far west end of Grand Tamarack Crescent. The subject property is depicted on screen here. As you can see, the subject lands are currently developed with a single detached dwelling. You can see that it is quite a large existing residential lot. It is typically larger than what we would see for the development of new lots. The development of new lots are typically more in line with this size type here, but the aerial imagery does provide a good overview of the current size and development of the subject property. So as discussed within the staff report, the subject lands are located within the fully serviced settlement area of West Shore. The lands are currently zoned residential 1 and do contain that existing single detached dwelling as pictured on the aerial imagery. The applicants are proposing a concurrent consent and minor variance application to facilitate the creation of 2 new residential lots with 1 retained lot containing that existing dwelling. So the resulting development would be a total of 3 lots, the 2 new lots and the 1 retained lot containing the dwelling. The proposed minor variance application would seek to recognize a reduced setback of that existing dwelling to the new proposed lot line of one of the severed lots, as well as a reduced lot area for just one of the proposed lots. I would note that the proposed retained lands would continue to have frontage on Bayou Road, with the severed lands proposed to have frontage off of Grand Tamarack Crescent. I will show a site plan provided by the applicants to kind of show how that would work. And I will note that the proposed severed and retained lots would maintain the existing residential 1 zoning of the property. So this table on screen and as included within the staff report provides an overview of the proposed lot configurations. So the retained lands would maintain their existing frontage of 30.4 meters on Bayou Road and have a proposed resultant area of just under 1,000 square meters, around 936. Severed lot number 1 is proposed to have a frontage of 19.75 meters on Grand Tamarack Crescent, with an approximate lot area of about 600 square meters, which is in compliance with the township zoning bylaw for the residential 1 zone. And severed lot number 2 is proposed to have a frontage of 16.5 meters on Grand Tamarack Crescent, again in conformity with the requirements of the residential 1 zone. And as noted, the applicants are seeking a concurrent minor variance application to recognize a reduced lot area for that second proposed severed lot, having a proposed area of 506 square meters, where 600 square meters are required by the R1 zone. The proposed minor variances are depicted on screen here. So as noted, this would seek to reduce that reduced lot area, and the applicants are additionally seeking that reduced rear yard setback for the existing dwelling to the proposed severed lot, with a rear yard setback of 3.84 meters for that existing house. As shown on screen and as included within the staff report and in the planning justification report provided by the applicant's agent, this is a sketch of the proposed severance. The sketch does provide a really good job at showing how development can be accommodated on the proposed severed lots and still meet the provisions of the zoning bylaw. So as seen here, this would be the retained lot containing that existing dwelling, maintaining the appropriate coverage for the R1 zone. The R1 zone does allow for a lot coverage of 30%. So the existing development on this property would still be in compliance with the zoning bylaw. This is where that reduced rear yard setback is proposed to. So this would be the setback from the existing dwelling to severed lot number 2. The applicants have shown a proposed building envelope or a conceptual building envelope to depict how development in the future could potentially be sited appropriately on the subject property in compliance with the lot coverage for the R1 zone and the applicable setbacks. I will note that even though lot 2 is proposed to have a reduced lot area, the applicants have shown that it is possible to still develop the property in compliance with the R1 zone, despite having that reduced area, still being consistent with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. Staff did attend the site, so I have included some photos on the screen here. Not really much to look at, as it is some vacant lands. So this would be the existing dwelling to maintain on the retained lands. This area here would be the approximate location of those 2 new severed lots. It does appear that there is some accessory structures or swing sets and playground equipment as the like on the existing retained lands. Just making sure that that stays on the retained lands and doesn't make its way onto the severed lands. That is included as a condition for provisional approval recommended tonight. The applicants did provide a helpful conceptual elevation drawing just to show what type of dwelling potentially could fit on the subject property. It does provide an idea of what type of dwelling could fit within that building envelope and still comply with that lot coverage, height, all of those kind of items that would be required to be met should an applicant come forward with a building permit to develop the lots at any point in the future. The applicants have provided a planning justification report with their application. Staff generally concur with the planning opinions expressed by Ms. Bonnie Tang through the planning justification report provided with the application. The applicants did provide a detailed planning policy analysis of the applicable policy being the PPS, the growth plan, the county of Simcoe official plan, the township official plan, and zoning bylaw. Again, I will just reiterate that the subject property is located within the fully serviced settlement area of West Shore, and all of those prescribed planning documents do direct this type of new growth and development to these municipal settlement areas, and does encourage the use of underutilized lands such as the subject property. We did receive some comments on the application. So it's standard comment from Enbridge. They have no objections to the application, but they do reserve the right to amend their comments and conditions. Please always call before you dig, and it's a responsibility of the applicant to verify the existing gas servicing does not encroach on more than one property when subdividing or severing. As discussed in the staff report, the Public Works Department did review and comment on a draft or preliminary lot grading plan provided by the applicants. These comments are quite detailed, but they are beneficial to the applicant as they do provide some sort of details and directions forward. Essentially, the Public Works Department would suggest a different servicing connection location as was originally proposed by the applicants on their lot grading and servicing plan. Although the Public Works Department did not accept the servicing as shown on that plan, they are comfortable that an alternative solution could be reached through the water and sewer connection agreement process. And I would just note that that is typically how those types of items are addressed through the consent process. The water and sewer connection agreement is a standard condition of any consent application within a municipal fully serviced settlement area in the township. And that is typically where those types of items are worked out. Planning staff and public works staff have connected with the applicants and their agents to arrange a meeting outside of the committee of adjustment process should the application be provisionally approved to discuss these items. So that way their engineer could chat with the public works department just to discuss these comments in more detail. However, again, I would just say that the Public Works Department is comfortable with deferring these items to a condition of provisional approval, and that is typically how those types of items are usually dealt with. The applicants, there's a couple comments here separate from the servicing just regarding the grading of the driveway and the culverts for the entrance permit process. Again, those are types of items that usually address either one through the building permit stage or two through the entrance permit application process. But the Public Works Department did provide pretty helpful comments to the applicants through this process. The chief building official stated no objections to the consent and minor variance applications. The engineered lot grading plan appears to address the grading of the properties. The chief building official just notes that lot grading will be very important with these lots. Similar to the other application, the design of the house must consider limiting distance requirements from the building code when designing the dwellings. Please note that a cross-section of the proposed dwellings was not provided. However, that is something that is generally reviewed through the building permit process. Depending on the proposed height of the dwelling, the requirements for decks in regards to required setbacks should also be considered. And this just speaks to the items discussed earlier from the township clerk. Any items currently located on the proposed severed lot should be removed or relocated. This is just recommended as a conditional provisional approval just to avoid any future situations of non-compliance. Again, it did just look to be like a swing set or things like that that are mobile. This would just be a condition as a catch-all to make sure that we're not creating a situation of non-compliance. For all of those reasons, and as discussed during the staff report, planning and development staff have no objections to the provisional approval of the minor variance and consent applications, subject to the recommended conditions included in the staff report. So the recommended conditions of provisional approval for the minor variance is completion of conditions of provisional approval for the consent application should it be approved. And those conditions for the provisional approval of the consent application are our typical conditions that committee is pretty familiar with for consent applications, being the reference plan of the several parcels being prepared, the copy of the electronic registration and preparation draft deeds for review with assigned acknowledgement and direction, municipal taxes being paid up to date, a payment of 5% in lieu of parkland dedication for the severed lots, the applicant obtaining the entrance permits onto Grand Tamarack Crescent for the two severed parcels, that the applicant applies for water and sewer connections for those two lots. That was what we discussed earlier and through the public works comments provided. that the applicant obtains provisional approval of the minor variance at their own expense to recognize the reduced setbacks and the lot area. Again, that application was concurrently heard by committee tonight. That the applicant ensures that any items located on the proposed severed lands are removed or relocated just to ensure compliance with the township zoning bylaw. If a building permit is required for any of those items, the applicant would be responsible to obtain that. Number 9, that the applicant agrees that all fees and disbursements, if any, incurred by the township with respect to this application shall be paid for by the applicant. And 10, the conditions set out herein will be completed within 2 years of the date of this decision. That's all I have when speaking to the staff report. However, the applicant's agent, Ms. Bonnie Tang, is in attendance this evening, and I believe she would like to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? Please unmute yourself, turn your camera on. If you have a presentation to share, you are more than welcome to.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, committee members. My name is Bonnie Tang, and I'm a planner at Thorstone Consulting Services, representing the property owners of 3446 Bayou Road regarding the minor variance and consent applications. Thank you to Emily for that detailed presentation. I will aim to avoid repeating what has already been presented, as I do have a short presentation that I would like to now share with the committee. Is the presentation available for viewing?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. The subject property is located in an established neighborhood and is surrounded by existing single detached dwellings. The subject property has a total lot area of 2,043 square meters, with frontage on Bayou Road to the east and Grand Tamarack Crescent to the north. The proposal is to sever the subject property into 2 additional residential infill lots. The community of West Shore is a full-service settlement area, and the township policies have identified this area as being the focus of growth and development. Based on the size of the subject property and in consideration of the density of the surrounding area, the proposed infill severances are considered appropriate for this location. A minor variance application was filed concurrently with the consent applications to address 2 zoning deficiencies. The retained lot is requesting a reduced rear yard setback of 3.84 meters, and the proposed lot 2 is requesting a minimum lot area reduction from 600 square meters to 506 square meters. This severance sketch shows the proposed retained lot as well as 2 of the proposed new lots. As shown, the retained parcel contains the existing dwelling and driveway off of Bayou Road. The severance sketch also includes a conceptual building envelope of 39.5 feet by 41.5 feet. That would be appropriate for both the new infill lots 1 and 2. In addition, a generous rear yard setback of 10.8 meters, which is about 35.4 feet, is also shown on the severed parcels. The retained lot is proposed to have a lot area of 936 square meters. A variance has been requested for a 3.84 rear yard setback, which would become an existing condition if the severances are approved. Although we are requesting a variance to address the rear yard setback, it is important to note that majority of the rear yard actually enjoys a 7.5 meter setback from the house to the rear lot line, as the 3.84 setback is taken from the sunroom to the rear lot line. Severed lot 1 is proposed to be 600 square meters with a frontage of 19.7 meters along Grand Tamarack Crescent. No variances were required as the proposed lot and conceptual building envelope meets all applicable zoning provisions. In addition, we are providing a generous setback to the west of the proposed lot to protect the privacy of the adjacent neighbor. On this slide, I have included an example of what could potentially fit within the proposed building envelope. This design is similar to what the property owners would like to construct on the new lots in the future. Severed Lot 2 is proposed to be 506 square meters with a frontage of 16.6 meters along Grand Tamarack Crescent. We are requesting a variance to address the minimum lot area to be 506 square meters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 600 square meters. The reduction in lot area for Severed Lot 2 is due to the location of the existing dwelling on the retained lot. Although we are proposing a smaller lot size, I do want to note that the conceptual dwelling shown in the previous slide can appropriately fit within both proposed lots 1 and 2. The floor plans on this slide are taken from the same dwelling shown previously to provide context as to what could be located on the 2 proposed infill lots. In conclusion, the requested variances do meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. The proposed severances result in 2 proposed building lots that are not dissimilar to some lots in the neighborhood. And the severances also meet the purpose and intent of the provincial, county, township policies regarding intensification, and also meets the direction of the province in terms of providing additional housing. Based on my review of all applicable policies and understanding of the surrounding neighborhood, I believe that these proposed infill severances represent good planning and it is in the public's interest. As it relates to the subject applications, we have had an opportunity to review the staff report and have reviewed the conditions with the property owners. We are comfortable with the conditions and would ask the committee to support the consent and minor variance applications tonight. The property owners are also in attendance at the council chambers to provide a quick background and history of the subject property. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Are there any persons participating virtually via Zoom who have either questions or who wish to speak in favor or opposition to the application? Please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Are there any persons in attendance in person who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or opposition to the application? Please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. If you can just come up to the microphone, just so that everybody on Zoom can hear you as well.
Is it? Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Carmen Spiteri-Johnson. So my husband, David, and I are the applicants in this application. Sorry. I can sit down. Okay. My name is Carmen Spiteri-Johnson, and my husband, David, and I are here. We are the property owners of 3446 Bayou Road. We are here with this application. Dave's mother, Helen Armstrong, bought this property in 1985 and lived here for 30 plus years and was a vital member of the community. She passed away 10 years ago, and so the property has come into our hands. And allowing us to subdivide this property, we'll be able to provide land for our children to perhaps build housing in the future. So we have 3 children in their 20s, and we know what the crunch is. And so we are trying to provide for them, as we know that my mother-in-law, Helen, would have wanted. There are her only 3 grandchildren. So this is for them. So we obviously would like to hear your approval of the application process. We intend to follow all of the things. We're not big time developers. We are here for our children's future. Thank you.
Anybody else in person that wishes to speak? If you just come up to the microphone too, please. Thank you. If your name and address.
Am I not on? No? Okay. So along the area that we're in and where the subject property is, there are drainage issues. And so I just wanted to know if that's something that is addressed, because I don't know. I'm not familiar with the process. So I'm not against it. I'm not for it. I just don't know about it. Yeah.
So if there's an engineer's plan, like they can, which is that line is, I'm sure that.
Yeah, so maybe if we get the applicant's agent or staff to maybe just respond to that question about drainage on the property and how that will be handled.
That's the only question.
Emily, if you'd like to answer that, give your hand up.
Just before you,
It wasn't
Oh,
on.
it wasn't? Brenda Campbell, 3455 Timberline Avenue.
Thank you, Chair. The applicants have provided a draft lot grading plan with their minor variance application to demonstrate how drainage would be managed on site in relation to surrounding properties and the subject lots themselves. Again, the engineered lot grading plan is also a condition of building permit. However, to kind of proactively address drainage concerns and things like that, the applicants did provide a draft lot grading plan with their minor variance application, which was reviewed by both the Public Works Department and the Building Division. That will also be reviewed again through the building permit process at the time of building permit application once the final design of any potential future dwelling is determined. So it's been reviewed through this process and will be additionally reviewed through the building permit application process. If the applicant's agent has anything additional to add to that, Ms. Tang, you're certainly welcome to as well.
Thank you, Emily. Through the chair, I do concur with Emily's comments. We have provided a draft proposed lot grading plan for this process, but a more detailed grading plan will be provided as part of the building permit process.
Thank you. Anybody else in person wishing to speak? If you'd like to come up to the microphone, name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Stacy Hatch at 2666 Grand Tamarack. My home would be directly across the street from the proposed homes. I guess I'm neither for or against either at this point. I guess one of my major concerns is the high volume of traffic that's already running down Grand Tamarack because of Tim Hortons and the overpass. Also, I'm just kind of wondering is it kind of set in stone what type of homes you're wanting to build, or because I'm wondering about how high is it going to be, how close to the road you're going to encroach on. I like light. So the sun, your home, if your home is high, or, I won't get any light. And I think another thing that we talked about with my other neighbor was renters. Like, I know once the home is built and it's sold or whatever, you don't know who's going to live there, but it could be multiple people living there, which is also traffic based as well. I think that's it for me.
So maybe I can get Emily, if you can comment on maybe the height and closeness to the road that minimum requirements would be, or maximum for height. That might give a little bit of light on maybe the possible total height and how close it would kind of encroach onto the road at closest point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, to the members of the public. So the property currently is zoned residential 1, and the subject or the proposed, severed lots would retain that zoning. So the residential 1 zone only has a maximum total height of 9 meters. And the minimum required front yard setback is 7.5 meters, so that would mean that the house is required to be set back 7.5 meters from the edge of the road allowance and would only be permitted to have a height of 9 meters measured at the front of the dwelling. I will just note that the residential 1 zone would really only permit for a single detached dwelling. So if the applicants did want to vary the permitted uses, they would have to seek additional Planning Act approvals, of which surrounding properties would be notified of.
That answers your height and
yes,
other concerns. And then I guess as for the rental concerns, it sounded like the applicant was planning to have their children possibly build and live in these homes. I think that's the current plan.
Yeah, because your children live there now? Oh, okay, because we just see a whole bunch of kids. That's why I thought. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Does that satisfy your questions and concerns?
Yeah, I think my major one was the traffic.
Okay.
That's always going to be an issue.
Any other people in person that would like to comment? If there are no other further questions or comments, I declare that the public portion of this application is closed. Do members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on the application? Member Bossy.
Through the chair to staff, Emily had alluded to some correspondence, or did we not receive any?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I did cover the correspondence received. So that was comments from Enbridge and the internal comments provided. I can clarify any of those as best I can if you have any questions. Thank you.
I thought when you said correspondence, it was from neighbors or other people affected. Sorry.
So I have a couple questions. One to the applicant's agent. The houses that were shown as the proposed homes, the total lot coverage, it was said that they would be under the maximum required for the lot or the maximum allowed for lot. Did that include for other structures like decks and such in that, or would we be looking to get further minor variances in the future coming forward for anything additional that way?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. This conceptual dwelling that we're showing is just for conceptual purposes. When the property owner will decide to build on the property, they will ensure that the lot coverage maximum includes both the house as well as accessory structures, as we have not requested for any additional variances to deal with lot coverage.
Thank you. And then one question for staff. Is there any time frame that is required to start the building process from, I know there's certain times to fulfill the requirements of the consent and so on, but any requirements as to when building needs to start, Emily?
Thank you, Chair. So there is a timeline to complete the conditions of consent. However, once the consent certificate is issued and registered and those lots are created, there wouldn't be a specified timeline counting down to when you would need to submit your building permit.
Thank you. Member Bossy?
Through the chair to staff, who covers the cost of there's a curb there right now, so taking the curb out and putting in a driveway through that sidewalk?
Through the chair to Member Bossy, the Public Works Department did provide a bit of insight into that through their comments. However, those are items that would be addressed through the entrance permit process. So it would be reviewed by the Public Works Department, and they would sort of secure or make any arrangements or requirements through the entrance permit process.
If we can get a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I can share my screen.
I'm just over here. So we have motion COA 2024-012, moved by Member Hawkins, seconded by Member Hiles, that staff report D24-14 be received, and that the matter of minor variance application A-07-24 be provisionally approved, subject to the recommended conditions included as attachment 6 to staff report D24-014, and further that in the matter of consent application B-02-03-24, the applications be provisionally approved, subject to the recommended conditions included as attachment 7 to staff report D24-014. Call for a vote. And we are carried. The hearing for this application is now closed. You are free to stay for the remainder of the meeting or leave as the committee moves on to the rest of the meeting. We have no more applications. So are there any reports from officials? Any correspondence? If we can get a motion for adjournment. We have motion COA 2024-022 moved by member Bossy, seconded by member Hawkins, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:20 p.m. on Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. And we are carried. Have a great night.